The Microsoft Office ribbon button is the strip of buttons across the top of the main window. It was introduced in the Office products in 2007 and is fundamentally changed the whole look and feel of how we navigate and do things within Microsoft Office. It takes about a week to get used to, really, from my experience, but once you do, it's very, very powerful and it certainly is intuitive. Let's have a look. So it's made up of a series of tabs. Here, for example, I've got Home, Insert, Design, and we'll go through them. The Home one is designed to have all of the functions that you want to use on a day-by-day basis. Some of the key features of all of them is you'll see at the very bottom there's a little button hat down here. What that basically does is when you click on that, it actually shows more. If I perhaps click on the little drop down here, it could bring up a gallery, all related to the item that you selected. Another good feature of a ribbon is all live. So for example, I've just highlighted some text here in my slide. You will see that up here the fonts have now become active. And what I can do is I can click on the font and I can just hover over them. And as I hover over each one, you can see that the actual text itself is changing. So I can actually see in real time, before having to select something and going back, I can see what it's going to look like. I'm just going to move the mouse away and just click out of that. As I mentioned, the items that are on this Home tab are the ones that are supposed to be the ones you use most regularly. And you can customize this ribbon. We'll look at that shortly. But for example, here you can see I've got all the shapes. If I click on this, I can see all the shapes that are available. But also those shapes are here in this insert area, and I can click on shapes and it's exactly the same panel. So the ribbon itself, each tab is split up into different areas you can see with this divider. So for this Home one, I've got a clipboard. I have slides, so I can change how the slides look and feel. I've got the fonts. You've just seen how I just changed the actual font that I was using. How I can do the formatting in terms of a paragraph and drawing. We also have editing with the find and replace. Let's look at some of these tabs now. The very common one is the Insert tab. If I click on the Insert tab, I now have the ability to insert a table. And if I select on that, depending on where I drag the mouse, will depend if it's 5 rows by 5 columns or a 9 by 4 table. And you can see on the right hand side the table is just giving me that live preview. Let's just move the mouse away and out of that. I can insert pictures, clip art, screenshots, very useful feature. We'll have a look at all of these in more detail in later classes. So the Insert tab, as you can imagine, is where I'd go if I want to insert anything into my particular slide. Text boxes, date and time, equations, video, audios. The Design tab is the look and feel of the particular slides. So we'll talk about again in later videos, but I actually have used a template here to provide this Blackboard style view of my slides. But if I move the mouse around here, I can see that all the formatting can be changed very easily. And all you're just seeing is the live preview. Transitions. Transitions is how when I move from one slide to another. So for example, I'm presenting these slides and I want to move from slide 1 to slide 2. So transitions is how that is shown during a presentation. So for example, if I choose the push, if I just click on it, you can see a preview of it. I can split them, so it goes that way. I can do an uncover. I can do a cover. I can do a shape. I can do a flash. And you might think that's it, but remember there's this little arrow down here, so I can click on that and there's a whole load of more options available. So for example, a conveyor. So you're welcome to play around with those. The one comment I would say with transitions is less is more, and the purpose of presentations is the content that you want to deliver, and people can get lost on the flashiness of slides. So generally, actually, would you believe, I generally put none. But it's up to you. Animations. So if I want to, you can see that none of these are active at the moment. As soon as I click on an object, you can see it's now active. I'm going to click Add Animation, and I can choose what animation I want. So now I'm going to have fade, So whenever I now go onto this slide, this will then fade in. I can split that particular element, wipe, have it as a wheel, fly in, there we go. And again, I'm just going to click none. So there's a different way you can animate the content on the slides. When I'm doing a slideshow, how do I want to set this up? So for example, when you're using PowerPoint, often the mouse click progresses from the next slide to next slide. But what I could do is I could set it automatically so that every 5 seconds, or perhaps the first one every 5 seconds, the next one 10 seconds later. It will be a very short show. But this whole slideshow tab is about how I'm going to use these slides and present these slides. You can also choose which actual display you want this on. For example, if you've got a projector, you might not want it on the primary screen, you might want it on the secondary screen, and we'll explain that in some later videos. I've got the review tab. The review tab is when you look at the spelling. Perhaps you might want to use the thesaurus. Add comments if you're sharing this with someone else. Perhaps you want to compare different versions of PowerPoint. Then I've got the view. How am I actually looking at the information right now as an editor of PowerPoint? What I might want to do is actually click on the slide sorter, and then I can see all the slides in one go, and I can perhaps zoom then by double clicking onto the specific slide. I might want to go and have a look at the notes page, so this would give me a nice easier way to write my presentation notes. For example, you need to talk about X, Y, and Z. I might want to look at a reading view. And you can see in the very bottom right, I've got these little arrows that allow me to progress. And then I've got these different icons just in the bottom right. Those actually are related to the specific views, and this one here is the normal view that I was looking at before. I can put grid lines on if it wants to help me realign the actual display. And there's a whole host of additional views settings that I can change. Add-ins is based on third-party software that you might have that has asked if you can actually install a plugin. And here's an example. I use Acrobat Reader, so therefore I have the Acrobat. So here's an example. I use Acrobat, so therefore I've got an additional tab specifically for that other piece of software. So there we go. We've got the ribbon. A great change to Office 2007 and further enhanced in 2010. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually look at how we could customize the content on that ribbon. Before then we're going to do a deep dive on some of the areas we just introduced.